In this week's episode of the Breakout Growth Podcast, Ethan Garr and I chat with Oren Kaniel, the co-founder and CEO of AppsFlyer. So if you are in mobile, there's a really good chance that you use AppsFlyer to measure, analyze, and engage with customers. Over more than a decade, Oren and his team have built AppsFlyer into the premier SaaS mobile marketing analytics and attribution platform. But they, and really the entire mobile ecosystem, have gone through a very challenging shakeup over the past few years as Apple announced significant changes related to user privacy and sharing of personal data. How does a company approach a looming sea change? How do you keep your team focused on the mission when the ground is shifting beneath your feet? And how do you keep your customer, or how do you help your customers navigate these challenges when they're really depending on you? So Ethan, do you think our audience will find answers to those questions today?
I do. The interesting thing about Apple's IDFA changes are that there was a long period between when they were announced and when they actually went into effect. I think it was well over a year. And in that time, like some of my mobile colleagues were predicting the demise of the AppsFlyers of the world and predicting that this would kill Facebook. But nobody really knew what the impacts would be because you couldn't really simulate those impacts. And if you're AppsFlyer and you're facing that, you have no choice but to just face it head on. But look, consumers were still going to use apps. They were going to play games, watch TikTok videos, post to social networks. Everyone had to figure it out. And ultimately, good companies with strong product market fit, those are the ones that were going to adapt and survive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you and I worked together at Uproar through the .com craze and the eventual bubble burst. It was a crazy time, companies going out of business overnight, and our world was really turned upside down, but we never doubted for a minute that the web was here to stay.
Yeah, and the companies that made it through that period were the ones who had that real product market fit, took a longer view of the world, and had conviction to navigate those challenges.
Right. And in this case, Oren never looked at the next year or two as a future. He was looking in 5, 10, and 20-year chunks. And he asked this really great question to sort of frame how they managed through these challenges, which is, what do we know won't change?
Yeah, exactly. That to me was this incredibly poignant and valuable moment in this conversation that our listeners should pay attention to. Oren's convinced that ultimately the mobile marketing world after the shakeup is eventually going to get back to the same place it was at, or even ahead of where it was, and someone's going to win. So what does Oren know won't change? He says that for the industry, privacy and accuracy won't change, and for his company, customer obsession and enabling innovation isn't going to change. It's from that foundation that he's able to lead his team through this craziness.
Yep. And to me, that's what's really instructive for our listeners. Change is all around you in digital all the time. You can count on that. But if you can find certainty in just a few areas, and especially if they're principled and mission-driven, you can navigate the uncertainty. For Oren, this has kind of become the norm. Now, Google just announced that it has similar privacy plans, and it's going to be implementing those plans in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and I think there's something else here that our long-term listeners would pick up on. When you hear Oren describe how AppsFlyer's customer obsession has been such a focal point and how they've had to lead their customers through this change, it reminded me that fast-growing companies lead more than just their markets. They actually shape the landscape.
Yeah, and I know where you're going with that. It's really why we both love the EV Box interview, where we really dove into that. And you're right. You know, it's why community-led growth is picking up steam. So another interview that we did was with Atlassian and how they're driving value across their vast portfolio. Essentially, companies that win aren't at the mercy of the wins. They really harness the wins.
I see what you did there, Sean. You turned up a sailing reference just to hook me there.
Right, I did. And if you don't know, Ethan and I both love sailing. So sometimes we throw that into the mix. And particularly for me this week, I'm about to leave for a 1,000-mile sailing race. So it's really top of mind for me. But Ethan, let's keep things on track.
Yeah, I'm super jealous of your 1,000-mile sailing trip, by the way. But sounds like a good idea. Let's jump in with Oren.
All right. Hi, Oren. Welcome to the Breakout Growth Podcast.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. And I'm joined by my co-host, Ethan Garr. Hey, Ethan.
Hey, Sean. Hey, Oren.
Hey, what's up, Ethan?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, so Oren, we were looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it says, "I'm having fun building the best company I would love to work for as an employee." That's really cool. So
yeah,
that's the beauty of being a CEO is that and founder is that you get to shape that type of company. So for anyone in our audience that's not familiar with AppsFlyer, can you describe the company and really who wins with your service?
So maybe, I first of all, thank you very much. I think that I'm very fortunate to actually building the company that I am an employee at. And I think that I have some experience as being as an employee, both in big companies, enterprises, and smaller companies. I learned a lot about the good stuff and the challenging stuff, and this is what I've been trying to do in the last 10 years. So maybe I can start with the AppsFlyer story and how it actually came about. I mean,
that would be fantastic. Yeah,
it was actually it was maybe 2010. Getting to 12 years. I got my first iPhone. I was working as a summer associate in a VC in the East Coast. I did some work for them in the marketing and advertising vertical. I noticed conflict of interest. So a lot of logos. I just didn't get which interest are they representing. In the end of the day, we have a market of buyers and sellers. Buyers want to pay less and get more. Sellers want to get paid more and get paid more and do less. This is the nature of business. But I just couldn't find even one company that represents the buyers in this ecosystem and the buyers' interest and the brands and the consumer companies, basically. I also noticed the lack of measurement. I just, as an engineer, it was very hard for me to understand how companies making significant decisions in terms of budget allocations and et cetera, without having any form of data. It just was mysterious for me. Then moving back to the first 48 hours that I had my first iPhone, it was used. I bought it in Craigslist. This is how cheap I was. I
we
was
respect
sure.
that.
I was sure that BlackBerry is the thing. So I was a BlackBerry user. So I thought that this is, Apple do not have any chance to just compete with that. Obviously, I was completely wrong, and I realized that in 2010, and I really wanted to be a part of this newly forming economy. I think that I was pretty convinced that mobile devices are going to change everything about every single thing in our lives, and unfortunately, actually. So back in the day, 2010, 11, so all the major companies, that revolutionized mobile, like WhatsApp, like social networks, like the Ubers and stuff like that, been there already. And I've been thinking about how can we build something of value to every single app developer so they can become successful in this emerging economy. And this is basically what we're doing. I mean, solving these two kind of major things that we noticed. One, the lack of measurement, and maybe as an engineer, this is kind of my mindset of making logical decisions. Companies and people couldn't measure, and if you cannot measure, you cannot improve, and if you cannot improve, you cannot deliver value to end users. That's one. The second assumption that we had, that in order for us to be successful or trusted in this ecosystem, we must be independent and unbiased in this ecosystem. And specifically because we didn't come from advertising or marketing backgrounds, it was an awesome thing to work with brands and to work with developers and work with marketers, so we can really understand how the day-to-day looks like and what is lacking, and how we can improve their lives and help them be more successful. And I think that this is also something that have defined our kind of customer obsession kind of mindset, because this is how it started, really. So, really working with customers and understanding their needs. So, our platform is used by most of the consumer brands in the world. to, the bookings, Walmart, Alibaba, Nike, Visa, most of the major gaming companies, and also banking companies. So it's kind of really very, very diverse portfolio of companies. Actually, the last interesting use case that a company leveraged our technology is Coinbase with their Super Bowl ad that we powered the experience and part of the measurement. So, and actually, these kind of things really makes me excited because we are in the business of enabling business. We're enabling innovation to enable innovation with our customers and the ecosystem. And I think that once customers start using our universal SDK, because this is kind of based on our naturality in the market. Once they start using our SDK, when they start use our API, they can go ahead and leverage any other market company in the ecosystem. So our marketplace includes 10,000 different partners. So all the Facebooks, the Googles, and TikToks of the world, but also 15 different verticals, tech verticals, like all the marketing clouds, like Salesforce, Adobe, Oracle, any kind of analytics company, or basically any company you can think of. Because basically what happened, in order for us to do measurement for our customers, they need to leverage our cloud and store their consumer data. And that, just by the fact that it's already there in a very flexible format, they can go ahead and leverage that and utilize that with different companies to kind of create this kind of collaboration in the ecosystem. And I think that in the last, and maybe we're going to talk about it a little bit today, how in this privacy preserving era, it's actually connecting the dots. And with what we do in the last 10 years, just 2020 and 2021 and 22, actually kind of connecting the dots to everything that we've done in the past, whether there's a lot of lack in it or different frameworks that we've done, but really it's kind of a magically connecting everything together into this time, which is, I think, it's extremely rare and unique time in the history of the digital economy, and specifically I'm talking about the last 2 years and probably the next couple of years.
I just want to jump in, Oren, and ask you a quick question. Going back to the early on, I mean, 2010, 2011 is really early on in this mobile ecosystem. Did companies realize they needed the things that you were offering that early, or was it early on? Was it a different challenge? And now everybody knows they need an AppsFlyer or they need a mobile measurement platform to help them. But back then, was it really a process of educating them?
First of all, yes, and it's interesting because you said 2010 or 2011 or 2012 was early. It was early when we 9 and 10 years ago. If you look at 2022, 10 years from today, it will be very early in different aspects that's happening in these days. And I can tell you that when we started to work in the ecosystem, we really felt like the consumer business is, I wouldn't say saturated, but really all the major components were there. Basically, we selected B2B because it's more fun to us, enabling other companies to do great things, and we also wanted to minimize the risk for us. So we've selected. Actually, now I'm answering something else. We've selected an ecosystem that, at least in our opinion, is going to continue to grow like crazy in the next 10 years. And we've selected mobile and data analytics. And we didn't select any specific vertical. So we didn't select gaming or streaming or dating or anything else, or payments or anything else. We've selected to build a platform that will allow any app developer anywhere to do great thing and to innovate. So this is what we had in mind. But really, maybe you can repeat the question.
I was just saying, early on, did companies realize that they needed this? Now, I think everybody understands how they're going to need data, how important it is. But back then, it was a different world.
Yeah, definitely. So companies thought that they measure. So when we came into companies, they said, we measure clicks, we measure impressions, we measure CTR. And we're like, yeah, okay. And how do you measure return on investment? And how do you measure the lifetime value? And how do you measure all these things? And I can tell you that at the beginning, in the first couple of years, it was really we had competitors, but we didn't really compete. It was really huge blue ocean that we've been working all the companies together on educating the market.
So I actually made an investment in a company that was doing something similar back around when you guys were getting started. So I saw that opportunity and thought it was a wide open opportunity because of the challenges with the mobile attribution. Unfortunately, that company wasn't able to execute. They pivoted in too many directions and eventually ran out of money. But it was interesting how challenging that mobile attribution issue was back then, and obviously there's new challenges that come up with some of the privacy that's happening now. But I had one question on when you talk about the ecosystem and marketplace. So do advertisers buy through you, or are you a service that sits on top of the publisher, or are you something that the advertiser buys directly as to complement to track? I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah, so good question. So we sell them the cloud software service. So basically, they buy the software that allows them to do great thing in the ecosystem, to collaborate with any one of our partners, and to collaborate leveraging our integrations. We're not sitting in the middle in terms of contracts, payments, what they do and what they don't do. We just provide kind of the ultimate facilitator, platform, APIs, analytics, business logic that they can configure and apply on top of the data. And then on top of it, they can make decisions on how to make payments, because many of the cases, so last year we measured more than 40 billion US dollars in mobile ad spend. So basically how our customers allocated the budget and allocated the payouts is based on the data and the measurement that we provide to the ecosystem to both ends. And then, they can leverage that with different, marketing clouds and different other partners if they want. And then they have the flexibility to pick and select the right data points that they want to leverage. And also we allow privacy preserving kind of ways and integrations and aggregations so they can continue to collaborate with different companies in the ecosystem in a privacy preserving manner. So really, moving back to your question, this is really kind of a platform. This is not, like AWS and stuff like that. We're really adding business logic and software on top of it. So what the right way to think about it, it's like CRM for consumer business. So once you have this CRM for consumer business, you can kind of work and collaborate with the entire ecosystem based on that and based on our universal SDK and APIs. Another aspect that we look at it is that we try to provide the minimum common denominator that will allow the entire ecosystem to work together. So we only adding to the platform things and functionalities that we are uniquely positioned to build, and everything else should go to the market to build on top of it. So we really in the fanatic about enabling innovation in the ecosystem. And then again, in order for us to do that, we don't want to compete on quality of engineers and stuff like that, and we don't want to build a product because it can be very profitable in the short term. We really want to build something that no one else can, not because we have great engineers, just because of our unique positioning in the market.
So let me ask.
That has to be. Let me just get.
Yeah,
sorry,
sure.
do one more in there. As you're going through that, and that focus that you have has been. It sounds like it's really served you well as the company's really successful now. But it is interesting to kind of take the path, or look at the path not taken with that other company that I mentioned that I had invested in, because there was so much opportunity and so many different next shiny objects to go chasing in another direction. I'm just curious how you stayed so focused on the opportunity and weren't distracted by some of the tangential things.
I think that this is a great question, because the amount of opportunities for us to generate more money, more revenue quickly in the short term, basically it's endless. And from the beginning, we thought, in order for us to do something meaningful in this ecosystem, we really need to maintain our neutrality in this market, and our independence, and staying unbiased, and really enabling innovation in this market. So we're not going to kind of compete with our partners in a pure, software building features. I just don't believe in this, and I think that this is fundamental, at least for us. I can give you an example. At the beginning, we've been focusing on attribution. And attribution, by the way, attribution and measurement by itself, it's extremely complex. It's probably one of the most complex software that exist. I mean, you have one, maybe couple of set of rules, but 10,000 different exceptions. This is, and you need to consistently deliver. It's a mission critical platform. If this platform going down for even 1 minute, I'm going to get phone calls from the CEOs of this entire planet. And this is not something that can accord. And also accuracy of the data and stuff like that, because really our customers are making significant decisions based on that data. So just doing that right, it's taken us 10 years and it's not done yet. So it's endless by itself. Now, I have patient, and patient is, I like languages, not that I know many languages, but in Hebrew, patient is savlanut. And savlanut is from the verb sevel, which is suffering. Because when you have patient, it by definition means that there is some suffering in the short term and the midterm, well, and investment for the long term. So yes, we had a lot of opportunities, but we said, okay, we're here for the really long haul. We need to measure every single decision that we're making in 5 and 10 years. And I want to be very specific about the time frame, because when you say long term, some people think it's 2 years. So I think that the minimum is 5 years and 10 years and then 20 years and then forever. And when you're thinking about forever, this is really liberating, because you're really thinking about what's the most important thing, and what is the vision of the company, and what does the building blocks that of the creation. Because hopefully, and this is the plan, that this company will continue to be there when I'm gone, like gone. And then I ask myself, will the fact that I helped build it, I started it with great group of people, am I still proud of the creation? And I want to imagine myself, and I don't know, 30 years, 40 years from today, really feeling this pride and really sense of belonging to this creation. So if I meet one of our partners or customers or employees, we would love to meet each other and talk about the past, and both of us will feel that we've done every possible thing that we can in order to serve them and make them successful, and not do something that can interfere with this.
So let me ask you on that,
Yeah.
because so you talk about, I mean, it's incredible to see somebody have the long view, because in tech, the long view is not something we hear about a lot. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. We don't, it is often because things are so dynamic and changing so quickly. But you mentioned suffering, and one of the things that it seems like happened in the last few years is there's been a big shakeup in the mobile industry. IDFA, Apple's privacy changes really shook up the industry, and now it looks like you're going to go through similar things with Google and when I first heard about these changes, people from my background in mobile were like, oh my God, this is going to kill companies like AppsFlyer. I wasn't so sure that it was going to kill companies like AppsFlyer, but I imagine that it caused a lot of suffering, or at least a lot of thinking on your part. I'm curious, is it the long view that gets you through that? And how did you approach that? And how will you approach this next version of that with Google?
Yeah, definitely. I think that this is a great question. And I think that this is a question every single company that decided to be in the digital ecosystem need to ask themselves and answer. So first of all, yes, there was a shakeup, and specifically if you're talking about our immediate competition, and maybe also to relate to the previous question, for us it was really radical to focus on customers and staying independent and unbiased. Again, like a CRM. So along all the opportunities in the market, like building profiles and graphs and persona graphs and selling targeting data and building an ad network and maybe having our own apps that will compete with our own customers, our customers made all these mistakes. You know what? Maybe in my view, it's a mistake, and this is great for them. And it's great that companies and people think differently about different things. We think differently. And we look at things in the long term, and we didn't want to impact the naturality in this ecosystem. And I think that and you know, if your vision is to make more money, it's not really a vision. I think that this is kind of the turning point downhill in the long haul. I mean, I don't think that any company vision can be make more money, or maybe say something else, and this is the intention or whatever it is. But for us, is to really enable a better and safer digital experience to people. So every single move that is actually taking us one step towards that vision of enabling a better, safer digital experience to everybody, this is great for us. Now, I think that well, I have a lot to say about privacy. I try to organize my thoughts. I think that Apple shakeup, in the end of the day, if you look at that from the end users experience, I think that this is great. I mean, you can talk about the way, you can talk about the collaborative effort, and this is something that Google is putting in front of them, which is great. I think that, well, I'll take you a couple of years backwards. We realized that we operate in the most dynamic, rapidly changing industries ever created. And working in this environment, you try to predict the future. And in this environment, predicting the future is not something doable. And we've been thinking about what's never going to change. What is never going to change in 10 years from today, in 2030, and in 2040? And we came up with 4 different things: security and privacy, accuracy of the data that we provide to our customers, customer obsession, and enabling innovation. So specifically for privacy, this is something that we have in front of us for many years. So obviously the changes of Apple and Google now didn't came as a surprise. Obviously we didn't know all the details, yada, 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 but we really saw ourselves as someone that do not have interest in media and media selling and profiling, because this is what we don't do that. We are in the business of collaboration. Now, if you think about collaboration and measurement, and if you think about the web and mobile app, the entire collaboration of this entire ecosystem was based on cookies and identifiers. Both uses and leverages user level data. And when you collaborate based on user level data, you are creating privacy concerns. And then we ask ourselves, how can we, put all the regulations and guidelines aside for a minute? Let's entirely focus on the end user. What is the right thing for the end user? And then we came up with great innovations like aggregated advanced privacy, conversion modeling, SK360, predictive analytics, web to app measurement. And we also released a couple of months ago the Privacy Cloud and Data Clean Room, which is really aiming to enable privacy preserving ecosystem collaboration. We also announced a partnership with Intel on the privacy enhancing technologies like homomorphic encryption and PSI, private set intersection. And I think that putting everything aside, and this is what I told the team, put everything that we've built aside and just think purely about the ecosystem and think purely about people and what can we do in order to enhance great value, great user experience, and great privacy for everybody, for all of us. Again, I mentioned languages, and here I prefer the English word, software. It's soft. And it also means that you cannot fall in love with the product. You need to fall in love with the vision. You need to fall in love with the customer and build that software. It's soft, and you need to iterate on it. And it's really hard, because when you're saying, when you're telling people, hey, don't fall in love with the product that you just built, it's hard because there is a kind of an emotional connection. But sometimes you need to do things differently, and that's great, because everything that you've done took you all the way here. And then what's the next step given everything? And again, let me just maybe summarize this just a little bit. We had this invariance framework, things that never going to change. This is, again, privacy is not going to go away. It's going to be there in 2020, 30. I can promise you that. We think that we can predict to some extent regulations and changes and platform changes if we entirely focus on people and what's the right thing for people, build the right software and technology for that, leverage the massive ecosystem footprint that we have, both with consumer companies, the largest brands that you can think of, and the largest platforms such as Google and Facebook and Apple search ads and TikTok and Snapchat and all of them, and really creating something that can extend the value and experience to consumers and preserve their privacy. Another example is the SK network. If SK network, for the listeners that don't know, it's kind of a framework that Apple presented with the app tracking transparency framework. But basically what Apple delivered and built is kind of a 6 bits of mechanism for collaboration. Now, with the 6 bits of information, it can do multiple things. But the thing is that everybody kind of need to speak the same language. And we took the responsibility to make sure that the entire ecosystem is kind of maximizing this very limited 6 bits of information. 6 bits. It's very limited. It's just 64 cases or data points that you can deliver. Very limited. And I can tell you that it was very successful. And today, the entire market is operating on kind of the same framework. Because again, once an app is encoding there's 6 bits of information, it needs to work with all the Facebooks and the Googles of the world.
So I want to ask a question that kind of zooms back out to the kind of probably from the listener's perspective with these changes. One of the things that will be pretty important is one of the things that really drove you, I think, in the business in the beginning is this idea of visibility to track return on investment. And I think, at least from my perspective, it seems like that visibility has gone down in the short term as it becomes harder to track return on investment. You can correct that assumption in a second, but here's the question: is as that visibility goes down, are you seeing ad rates, mobile ad rates, drop or increase? I could see a case for both of them, that ad rates would go up as people just say, I can't track it anyway, just throw a whole bunch into it, or ad rates might go down because I'm not going to spend if I don't know for sure that I'm getting a return on investment. So can you give a little bit of visibility there and where you see that affecting ad rates and visibility and the return on investment?
Unfortunately, I cannot provide you with one answer. I think
okay.
everything that you said is correct. And again, maybe I can even challenge what is higher and lower, because for some companies paying $10 or $30 or even $100 for user acquisition cost is good, because they can make more money out of it. And for some other companies, maybe it's only $1 or whatever it is. So it's really depending on the ROI. Does it impact ROI? Yes, it does, because you cannot measure it in the same way with the same level of confidence. So before this change, and now I'm talking about only in iOS, before the change, you had a lot of confident companies made significant decisions with a lot of confidence that they can invest $1 and get $2 out of it, which was great. And now they have less confidence because the ecosystem became much more complex. So you have different kind of measures. So now you have incrementality, and you have conversion modeling and aggregated advanced privacy and the measure of SKAd network. And by the way, all these measures are measured in silos. So if you look at the SKAd network, it's really siloed from the users that actually consented in the ATT framework. So we just recently introduced a single source of truth to exclude these users from SKAd. It was extremely complex, and now it's 10 times even more, maybe 100 times more complex. So if the confidence went lower than before, definitely yes. If the prices went higher or lower, it's really dependent on the ones that actually making the investment. I think
I've got to assume that they're going lower if you look at Facebook's recent earnings report, and as they are earning less, that would tell me that demand has dropped, and usually when demand drops, prices drop, but I don't have the visibility to know that for sure.
Yeah, because I saw Facebook said that they expect their sales to be impacted $10 billion in 2022 just on Apple's change. So I imagine
I think that it just takes a little bit more time to recover. And I'm very careful to say, because I think that by leveraging the privacy cloud and the data cleaning concept, the recovery can come very quickly. By the way, any kind of concepts like that. So, and I don't want to refer specifically to Facebook, and I think that this is true in general.
Yeah.
So the way
it's a
it
good
works,
barometer, I think, of the whole market, though.
To some extent, yes, but the market is pretty significant and dynamic, and I think it will change that for sure.
Mm-hmm. So for your success, sorry, Ethan, just one more in there. So for your success, do you think it's a matter of trying to get back to the visibility that we had before? Or is it simply if you can provide better visibility than any other solution out there, then you are the significant player in the marketplace and the ecosystem, and you can help a lot more success, but we'll never get back to those visibility levels that we had before. What's sort of your feeling?
So I believe, not that, I know, because it's actually operational, that you can get the exact same insights from the data without sharing user level data with each other. So Facebook can work, or any other company can work with any consumer brand company, work with them in this data clean room concept. They would not share user level data with each other. It means that the privacy of the users is preserved. You do not have a chance to uniquely identify any user in this data set, but the computation happens in this trusted data clean room environment, and only the insights are shared with both parties. So the quality of decision making is the same. Privacy is 100 times better. And not only that, it's 100 times better than cookie and identifier and the identifier format. It's better than any other user level data anonymization, because when you are anonymizing, you have two options: whether re-identification is fairly easy, or you need to strip so much data out of the user to the level that it's not something that you can use. It's not something that of value for decision making. So really, the aggregation is the way to go in terms of privacy. Now, we need to talk about privacy budgets or aggregations and what kind of aggregation is good enough for privacy, yada 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 yada. And I think that this is the market need to discuss and decide on that. I mean, and by the way, I don't even talk about the AppsFlyer Privacy Cloud, the data clean room. They can be different other companies, and we encourage competition on that front. What we suggest is something that is flexible enough for the companies to decide what is the right thing for their customers, so they can build it on top of it. They can bring their business logic or leverage the business logic that we've provided and built in the last 10 years, and also set the data governance and compliance that they want to comply with. So some companies maybe would like to have better compliance or even better aggregations, and maybe to use some cryptographic technologies in specific maybe sensitive data points, etc., etc. So they can define it, they can run it on a trusted environment that both companies can share that as a CRM and use only the insights. Data clean room concept is something that is used in other verticals. So if you think about, I don't know how if the listeners are actually aware of the concept. So maybe I'll give an example. Think about two hospitals that want to collaborate on healthcare records. Obviously, one way for them is to just share records, anonymized, no names, no SSN, stuff like that. But they can re-identify you because the record is really identifying you. So they can strip out the data. Obviously not good. So why don't they put their data in a trusted server so they can analyze it and make sure that the server never leaves user level data records, only aggregations. And let's say a good aggregation would be 1,000 people. And you never get user level data exchange between the two companies. And this is what we have in mind. And then the question is, what is the business logic? What is the measurement? What is the kind of analytics that you want to apply on this data?
Mm-hmm. So
go ahead, Ethan.
Stepping back from, I mean, that's amazing. And like you think about clean rooms and all this, I mean, it's amazing where you will be able to take the technology. I think you have a team of over 1,400 people now, so quite a large company. How did you lead them through this changing environment, and how do you make sure that it's the vision that stays in focus and you don't lose sight of that as these big threats or big challenges come up?
Yeah, so I think that first of all, being very open and honest about the challenge. I think that as a company, we've been practicing change and challenges in the last couple of years, specifically in the last 2 years. I think COVID and then that. This is something that we are talking internally in the company, that every change and every challenge is an opportunity. I encourage people to think about their personal life, their personal challenges, and their personal relationships. So tell me if there is one person in the world that do not have challenges in relationships. So these people probably do not have relationship, because and tell me one company, one business that do not have challenges. All the companies have challenges. Now the question is, how do you take these? Do you leverage that and think about the opportunities that presented in front of you, or are you just letting fear and anxiety to rule? And I think that we've been practicing it over and over and over again, because this is the only way to survive this ecosystem. This is the only way to survive the digital ecosystem. This ecosystem changes rapidly, whether you like it or not. I'm here because I really like it. And the only if it boils down to the ability of companies to be agile. Darwin said that, right? So not the smartest and not the strongest, but the most agile species will survive. And I think that he was referring to the digital ecosystem. Yeah. So this was and still is one of the core components for us as a company. And I think that any other company need to kind of think about it and practice it. And you know what? I saw so many people in the company that had a lot of challenges. And if you think about it, 1,500 people in the company in 20 countries. Well, we see a lot of people challenges, and I think that what we've seen is people taking their challenges and seeing them as opportunities. I can have a lot. Maybe we can have a podcast on it. I think that this is amazing. And again, we are in the business of software. We're not in the business of real estate. We're not building buildings. You don't need to make huge bets. In the end of the day, it's soft. And if we don't fall in love with the products, and we fall in love with the vision, and we fall in love with the ecosystem and customers, I think that we can do great things. And I think that having a great vision is something that people find meaning in their work and meaning in their challenge. And it was very, very difficult and challenging 2 years. I mean, in 2020, when Apple introduced iOS 14 in June 2020, AppsFlyer felt like Apple support center. We had hundreds and thousands and thousands and thousands of calls of worried customers and partners about the changes and what we're going to do, and can we talk with Apple, and can we, do a lot of other stuff to help them survive this massive change. So yes, you can take it in the wrong way, I believe, and you can take it in the positive way. I mean, companies looking at us as someone that can solve their problems and mitigate that risk and help them grow, and we take it with both hands. What's better than that having phone calls of customers telling you, hey, we have this significant challenge, can you help us? I think that this is amazing, and we love it. I love it, and I think that the people here that come and join the company also love it. I hope, because if not, they're in the wrong business. I mean,
yeah. But my big. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say it. It's interesting that you look at the bigger challenges of the company at sort of that micro level with your employees and their own personal challenges. I actually, just as I was kind of prepping for this conversation, I was seeing that you have, like, I think about 30 employees in Ukraine, and we're going through this crisis in Ukraine right now. And I imagine that, obviously that's a much different level of crisis and challenge, but it does seem like a company that has a really good long-term vision, and then thinks about the challenges over the long term would help. It'd be very helpful for having that same view for its employees, and a short view and a long view.
Definitely, I think that you can say customer obsessed, and you can say a lot of things, but in the end of the day, it starts and ends with the employees, and how inspired they are to take these big challenges, and supporting them in their growth, personal growth and career growth, giving them the right tools and environment. I think that people are a product of their environment, and if you provide people with great environment, diversify opinions, diversity, and you know what, just to allow them to be themselves, to allow them to not know things, and to allow them to make mistakes. And again, I'm moving back to the most elementary thing, which is kind of stupid, is to be themselves. And it's really hard. It's really easy to say. It's really hard to implement what it is. What does it mean to be myself? And I can tell you that it took me a lot of years, and many years. And only maybe in the last couple of years, I realized what it really is. Maybe I think what it is, but if you ask me, I feel it. Because if I want people to be themselves and act naturally and be not embarrassed to make mistakes, I need to act the same way. And if I act the same way, and I be honest about my truth, maybe it's not the ultimate truth, maybe you're going to have different truth. And if I allow myself to make mistakes, and sometimes I do typos on Slack and stuff like that, and people, hey, you had typo, and I'm like, okay, everybody have typos, and that's perfectly okay, because people will feel comfortable sharing their opinion, even if they don't have perfect English, even if English is not their mother tongue. And I think that this is critical, and I keep the typo there. And this is another way also to make sure that employees and people know that CEOs and management and board members are just normal people, and if they see these people as normal people like them, they will act naturally and will allow themselves to think about the market challenges and how can we mitigate them. And in the end, they provide the solutions. They work with the partners. They work with the customers, and they provide the feedback back to the product and back to engineering. And how can we enable them to be really all in, and to be motivated, and to really feel and act like a founder. This is one of our beliefs. And how can you enable them to really feel and act like a founder is really hard. But it starts and ends that they will just be themselves and provide their point of view.
Yeah, on that theme of mistakes, when you look back, I mean, the company's been around now for over a decade. When you look back, are there any mistakes that you've had to course correct that stand out? Of obviously there was no company killing mistakes up to this point, but it's almost impossible to have a flawless journey mistake free along the way. So is there any areas that really stand out that you wish you would have spotted something sooner, or a mistake that you want to highlight that you made along the way?
I think that one of the things that allowed me in the last couple of years, specifically in the last 2 years, to take some time to myself, to disconnect, think, read, and to use a lot of imagination. I I wish I had the time. Maybe maybe I had time to do that in the past, but because at the beginning you do so many things, and the early days, when you go to sleep, the company is going to sleep, and there is no customer service, nothing, right? So um, that's one. Um, Another framework that I recommend. I always recommended my managers and people that I work with, but I also say to myself is letting yourself go from the position, writing a job description for your replacement, um, thinking about the current challenges and the future challenges, and then sleep on it for one night, wake up and say, okay, this is me. And I promise you that there is a gap between when the company needs that position and where you at. And that's okay because the company is growing fast. Now the question is, how can we keep this gap from not growing? Maybe shrinking, but not growing too much. Um, and I do this practice myself. If I do that often enough, maybe I could do more because this is really kind of helping you, analyzing you. You are the best person to analyze you if you have the right mindset and if you have the right time to actually go ahead and do it and be very honest with yourself and saying, okay, that's okay. Here I'm doing okay, and here not really. And now what should I do, to improve that? So I think I've been doing it, and I think that this is how I grew. And by the way, most of the team here and the management are here for 6, 7, 8, 9 years, starting from doing everything. I mean, everybody started from junior positions, so including
That's great.
myself.
You've been able to retain the team. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's retain and grow. It's not retain. It's really, really grow. And every single day, every week, every quarter, every year. And that's really hard because so many reasons, but there are a lot of advantages, also disadvantages that you need to work on. But yeah.
I think that's probably a good place for us to wrap up as we're running short on time. But we always ask one question to wrap up, and I wanted to ask you, what do you feel like you understand about growth now that maybe you didn't understand as well a couple of years ago?
That it's hard.
Maybe the best answer we've had yet.
Yeah. And I love the long pause before the very simple answer.
It's
perfect.
Hey, Sean, have you noticed that too?
I have noticed that too. So no, that's great. And I just want to share a couple of my key takeaways because I think there's some really great ones here. And so the biggest is as you kind of reference Darwin along the way and the agility that's needed to survive and thrive. My initial instinct going into this call was, boy, I would hate to be where you guys are. This sounds really like a tough place to be. But as you've talked through it, and your conviction that the same decision level, your same ability to make great decisions are on the horizon, or maybe already here with AppsFlyer. But if that's the case, and the complexity has increased significantly, then that actually puts you guys in a great place, because now your solution is more critical than ever. Because from the early days when you started with attribution, it was a really hard problem, but it was a problem that was starting to be solved in many ways. And this has brought in a lot of new challenges to where I think the solution that is needed for today's challenges in a more privacy centric world is one that is probably a lot more of a winner takes all. And so, if that's the path that things are on, then you guys are in a great place. So I appreciate you sharing the journey that you've taken to get to this point, because I think it would be easy to diversify and say, in the worst case scenario, this would happen, and so let's get other parts of our business going. But you stayed really true to the problem, and I think you're in a place where a lot of companies are going to really be able to benefit, because they've got great solutions and they need to cost effectively get them to their customers, and hopefully do it in a privacy friendly way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, but maybe just to add on that. Thinking about the future, I really want to mention the metaverse, not the meta company, but the metaverse as a concept. And I think that in the end of the day, the decision is very simple, at least for us. And I think that there's one thing that we can all agree on. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg shared this vision. Tim Sweeney shared this vision for the metaverse for a couple of years. And I think that there is one thing that we can all agree on, is that the metaverse or the web, whatever, is really dependent on interoperability and collaboration of the entire ecosystem. So it's not going to be owned by one company, one major thing. So if we believe two things, it's two assumptions and two things, that privacy is here to stay and collaboration is a critical building block of the future, we need to have privacy preserving technology to collaborate. And this is basically what we want to build. We want to build that infrastructure that allows collaboration in a privacy-preserving way. Simple as that. And even if the metaverse is going to be this vision or that vision or whatever it is, two components, privacy and collaboration. And this is what we want to enable.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just want to also mention, as you've gone through this, you keep talking about the future and trying to predict the future, which is so hard. But I thought what stood out for me is that the whole time you've mentioned that as you look at the future, there are things that you look at as these are the things we know to be true that won't change. You said privacy, accuracy, customer obsession, and enabling innovation. Those are things that won't change for you. I think knowing what won't change is really a good way to stay grounded on the things that will, as you go through the things that will change. So it's been really interesting to chat with you, Oren.
Yeah, thank you, Oren. Fantastic conversation. And for everyone tuning in, thanks for listening.
Thank you.